Welcome back to the news today. A top advisor to Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei called the fate of Syria's Assad a red line today, further complicating efforts to find a political solution to the brutal war. It comes as U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry confirmed that next round of talks on the crisis will take place in New York later this month. I-24 News correspondent Uri Shapira has the details.
Days after the UK and Germany joined the airstrikes against the IS in Syria, the battle between supporters of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his opponents is becoming more entangled. The top advisor to Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei said Sunday that the future of Assad could only be determined by the Syrians themselves, and this issue is a red line for Tehran. Perhaps a message to some of its allies who have second thoughts regarding Assad's capability to rule Syria in the long term. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry announced that a new round of talks to stem the conflict in Syria will take place in New York later this month. Kerry, who visited Greece during the weekend, said that the human catastrophe in Syria is one of the reasons why the Syrian people feel that Assad no longer has legitimacy to govern. However, another reaction showed a possible U-turn on Kerry's approach to the future of Assad.
It is not clear that he would have to, quote, go. If there was a clarity with respect to what his future might or might not be.
In the meantime, another dispute erupted between Turkey and Iraq after Ankara decided to deploy hundreds of Turkish troops near the northern city of Mosul, an IS stronghold. The decision was slammed by the Iraqi government, who said it will take the necessary measures to preserve the country's sovereignty and independence. Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu tried to ease the tension.
Our cooperation and solidarity with Iraq, a country suffering from excruciating experiences, aims to eliminate terror from that country. We have trained our Iraqi brothers against Daesh in Bashika camp and in other camps. We will continue to train them.
At least 32 Islamic State fighters were killed Sunday in the Syrian city of Raqqa by the US-led coalition airstrikes. However, as long as the question regarding Assad's future remains open, the road to a solution in this long-lasting conflict seems like a dead end.
And with me right now here in the studio is Mayor Javed Anfar, Iranian politics expert. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Lucy.
So, Mayor, where does Iran stand right now concerning Syria and concerning its situation in the Middle East?
Well, Mr. Velayati said today that the survival of the Assad regime is a red line, but let's not forget this could be a red line or it could be a negotiation position. Let's not forget that in the recent nuclear negotiations, the deal was reached on the 14th of July. On the 23rd of June, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei said at least two red lines and both were crossed. One of them was regarding the inspection of military sites. He said no way, but there will be if it's needed as part of the 24 days maximum inspection. He also said that sanctions will have to be released on a step-by-step. We won't have to do this all the work and then after 6 months the sanctions are released. He said that's a red line, but actually it's happening. That crossed that red line too. Yes. So, it really depends. I mean, it could. I think there's a good chance that this is a negotiation position that Iran is adopting in order to strengthen its.
After seeing some kind of a, let's say, warming up in the relationship between the United States and Russia, or maybe some kind of an agreement about the future of Syria, I'm asking, where could Iran stand, and if Iran is left behind with, let's say, the behind-the-scenes agreements that are happening between Russia and the United States?
Well, that really depends. On the one hand, I think there is a difference in opinion regarding what should happen to Assad overtly. It seems, according to Haaretz, that the Russians are willing to let him go for the right price in terms of what they're going to get, probably protection of their bases in Tartus and Latakia in Syria, while the Iranians say, no, he has to stay. But I think there are probably things behind the door that are happening. The Iranians have shown themselves to be flexible when it serves their interest. And I think we shouldn't be wedded to this idea that Iran will hold on to Assad no matter what. They will use it as a bargaining position. They will try to keep him, just like they try to keep all the centrifuges and they try to keep other parts of the nuclear program. But we saw that they were willing to give it up in return for something. And I think if Iran is promised, for example, in the future Syria, right to access Lebanese territory from Damascus airport, protected rights, for its weapons, then I think that could be one of the conditions, an important condition under which Iran would be willing to give up on Assad.
So we're talking about round 2 of negotiations, but not in Vienna, but in another subject, in New York, about something else.
Well, yes, but we're probably going to see much of the experience gained in the nuclear negotiations now being applied to the question of Syria. And if some kind of solution is found, it's great for us in Israel. We don't want a Daesh-Stan on our border, nor do we want Mr. Assad, who has killed hundreds of thousands of his own people, to keep ruling over his own people.
Yes, Mayor Javed Anfar, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
The governor of Aden and at least 6 others were killed in a car bombing today claimed by Islamic State. The attack in Yemen's southern port city comes after President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi returned there to oversee an ongoing war pitting a Saudi-led coalition against Iran-allied Houthis. Danny Swaibel has the story.
The governor of Yemen's southern port city Aden, Jafar Saad, was killed by a car bomb on Sunday, an attack claimed by the Islamic State militant group, which promised more operations against what it described as the, quote, head of apostasy in Yemen.
We count the heads of the infidels as an act of faith and see wisdom in operations that behead them. God willing, they will not live in peace, and they will not be well among us so long as we live. The days ahead will prove who is unjust and who is a hypocrite.
Saad, who fought in the 1994 civil war for Southern forces against the Northerners, had lived in exile in Egypt and Britain before he returned earlier this year at President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi's request. At least 6 other members of Saad's entourage were also killed in the attack and many wounded in a city where President Hadi had returned last month to oversee an offensive by his forces against Iran-allied Houthi rebels.
The explosion was very powerful. The car was next to the wall. The fire was very intense. We pulled some wounded people out. We couldn't get the governor out because he was up against the wall and the car was on fire. And there were bullets and grenades inside the car.
IS's local branch has stepped up operations since the outbreak of the civil war in Yemen, emerging as a forceful rival to al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the main militant group in the country in recent years. IS has claimed responsibility for major attacks on security bases and on mosques run by Houthi forces who control the capital Sana'a. The Shiite Houthis have been fighting a coalition of mainly Gulf Arab forces, which began airstrikes against them in March.
And with me right now here in the studio, Ali Waqid, I24 News Senior Middle East Analyst. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, Ali, just Abd Rabbu Mansour just came back just a month ago, just around a month ago. He thought that everything is okay. Now this comes. What are the chances that he will leave again because he won't be able to control the situation anymore?
In the Yemeni social media this morning, there were already some rumors, some reports saying that because of the escalation in Aden, President Hadi might leave the city for the Gulf, mainly for Saudi Arabia. But Lucy, this incident of this attack of this morning is throwing shadows over the fact that this is not the first assassination that occurred in Aden since it was retaken, reliberated by the legitimate forces of President Hadi. And since the moment that the Houthis withdrew from Aden, we are hearing almost on a weekly basis a big assassination that is touching the persecutor or another responsibles in the local government. But this attack of this morning marks the official entrance of the Islamic State in the Yemenite arena, because the Islamic State, by assassinating the governor of Aden, sends a clear message not only to the government but also to al-Qaeda in the Arabic Peninsula and in Yemen. We are here to lead the jihad against the government and against the Houthis. And it's not an accident that just yesterday the Islamic State broadcasted a video video in which we saw Houthi prisoners who are bombarded from a few meters by Tau missiles and grenades, etc.
So, okay, try to explain to me. Just now, Mayor Javed Anfar was sitting here and talking about the, let's say, negotiation that Iran is holding concerning Syria. Now Iran is in another situation in Yemen, not now, for a long time now. They're in another situation in Yemen. Where what the rules of the game will be right now concerning with Saudi Arabia, concerning Yemen?
If you take it to the Saudi-Iranian acts, I would say in Lebanon, the pro-Saudi camp is offering to Hezbollah Iran camp a candidate from their own camp, but not Michel Aoun, the one who Hezbollah and Iran wanted to see president of Lebanon. This is a compromise in which Saudi camp say, okay, we are admitting that it should be a president from Iran camp. If we are seeing Syria, also in Syria we are seeing the Emirates passing from the Saudi camp to the Syrian Russian camp, and more victories on the ground of the Syrian Russian forces. And also in Yemen we are seeing Lucy, 2 months ago we were supposed to be here and to celebrate the entrance of the Yemenite army with the Saudis to Sana'a, the capital, and we are closer to see the Houthis back in Aden than to see the Yemenite army and the government back in Sana'a.
Yeah, so it's getting more and more complicated. Ali Waqid, thank you very much for this. The Taliban has released a 16-minute audio message. It says is from its leader to counter rumors Mullah Akhtar Mansour was wounded or killed in a shootout in Pakistan this week. It was not immediately possible to verify Mansour's identity.
Praise to Allah, I am among my friends. This incident never happened. It is not true. This is propaganda of the enemy, which was spread from Kabul media.